3 planes, 3 different sharpening methods. Let's talk about it. Here's the thing about sharpening. There's 100 ways to skin that cat. You can go diamond stones, you can go water stones, you can go oil stones, you can go jig, no jig, you can freehand, you can hollow grind, you can flat bevel, you can secondary bevel, you can primary bevel, all of the things, all of the ways, and everybody has an opinion on what the best way to do it is. I'm gonna let you in on a secret, because this is the point of my video. None of it matters. You can sharpen whatever way you want to sharpen and you will be just fine so long as you have a highly polished bevel meeting a highly polished back edge. That's all that matters. That's all sharpening is. How you get there is entirely up to you. However, there are 3 main schools of thought, more or less, the 3 biggest schools of thought as to how to sharpen when it comes to woodworking tools. It doesn't matter how you get there. It only matters that you get there. So, I've got 3 planes. Each one of these has a different style of bevel on it. I've got a hollow grind on this plane. This is my go-to number 4. This is one of my favorite planes that I have, and this is the style of sharpening that I use most often. On this bad boy, I've got a flat bevel, so we're gonna talk about how the hollow grind and the flat bevel differ from one another, even though they're very similar in execution. And then on this guy, I've got a convex bevel, so we're gonna talk about how the process of sharpening that convex bevel is different from the other 2. So the first question that you may have is, what the hell is a hollow grind? A hollow grind simply means that this area of the blade, the primary bevel, is ground at a hollow. It's not flat, it's not convex, it's concave. So this section right here is ground away on a wheel. Now, of course, the next question is, how do we hollow grind? The grinding wheel. Right off the jump, the first thing you're probably going to notice is this thing is old and busted. This thing is probably 30 years old. I don't remember where I got it. I may have even just found it in my mom's garage or been given it by my neighbor as a kid. It's here, it gets the job done. And this is a key important thing. This is not a slow speed grinder. Now, a slow speed grinder is going to rotate at about 16 to 1700 RPMs. This one rotates at 3500 RPMs. So the big downside to that is because it's rotating so much faster, you run a higher risk of damaging the temper on your tool steel. Now, what that means is the tool steel is hardened to a certain Rockwell hardness, usually between 67 and 70, I think, somewhere in that range. And if you heat it up too much, if you do what's called bluing the steel, when the steel gets that blue-brown color, then you can soften the steel and ruin the temper that's been put into it. So that's the downside of this grinding wheel. The upside is it's free. So I'm gonna keep using it. Now, in order to avoid damaging the temper, I've got a little cup of water right here. That's all it takes, is just dipping the steel into the water each time it gets a little bit hot, and that prevents it from overheating. So, that all being said, let's grind some steel. Now, I've already done a video on this sharpening technique, so I'm not going to address it at length here. If you want to watch that video, check it out in the corner, whichever corner it lives in. For right now, I'm just gonna get this thing licked up. just like that, I'm back to having that highly polished tip right at the edge. And that's the thing we're looking for out of this process. The whole reason to hollow grind is so that when you're on the stones, you have to polish as little material as possible, making it faster. That's the theory, that's my experience. This is why I use the hollow grind method, because now every time I go to sharpen, I only have to polish a 1/16th, an eighth. Anytime it gets above that, I take it back to the stones. This grind, this single hollow grind, will last me months before I have to go back and regrind. So very happy, good cutting edge. Let's get this in the plane and see how she functions. That's a beautiful, beautiful edge. Nothing wrong with that edge. It's perfect. Now, what if you're like, listen, Eric, that's great and everything, and I love the hollow grind, I love the wheel, all that jazz, but I don't want to drop 150, 200 bucks on a wheel. I want to do it on the cheap. Let me introduce you to the flat bevel method. This is more or less identical to the hollow grind method, but we're gonna use just a flat plate, in this case just a flooring tile from your big box store. For our purposes, this is flat enough. Remember, we're making furniture, we're not building the Eiffel Tower. So what I've got on here are 2 grits of sandpaper. I've got like a 150, 180, somewhere in that region, and I've got a 600. This is gonna be enough to establish my primary bevel. Then I can take it to my stones and I can polish up a secondary bevel, which is going to give me that high quality cutting edge that I need. So let's dive into this bad boy. Now you can see on this that what I have here is just a single flat bevel that I establish using the sandpaper on this plate. And in order to do that, I'm going to use my same honing guide. Once I've established my primary bevel, now I can focus on my secondary bevel. And I have a couple of options here. I can set this up back in my jig at 35 degrees and I can take just a couple of swipes the same way I did before. But for the sake of showing you this technique, I'm going to sharpen this one up freehand. Now, in order to avoid honing the entire flat bevel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on my stone and I'm going to rock it up and down until I feel that flat register right on my stone, which is right around there. I'm going to lock my elbows in at my side, and I'm going to lift up just ever so slightly, and I'm going to move my entire body back and forth. Now, here's the danger with freehand sharpening. If I'm trying to find my angle and I'm not quite getting there, and I sharpen, each time I sharpen I'm trying to find that angle a little bit higher, and over time I eventually put on a secondary bevel that just keeps growing with each sharpening. Same thing over here on the polishing block. If I don't find that angle properly, next time I go to do it, I'm going to be a little bit more here. Eventually you're going to break 45 degrees and it's not going to cut in a standard bevel down plane, which is bedded at 45 degrees. So you do have to be mindful of that, you have to be careful of that, and that's the skill component of this, is making sure that you're not continually growing that bevel. The benefits to using this technique, of course, are outside of a $15 honing guide that you can buy on Amazon. This is more or less free and simple. And speaking of free and simple, this video is sponsored by Brilliant.org. Brilliant is the best way to learn math and science interactively, which of course you already know. Brilliant has thousands of fun and interactive lessons that can help you refine and advance your math and engineering skills, and by extension, your woodworking skills. From everyday math to physics and engineering, Brilliant customizes content to your educational needs and lets you learn at your own pace. Plus, new lessons are added monthly, so you never get bored. Now, if you're still unsure why you should use Brilliant's online interactive lessons to learn the foundations of math and engineering, let me tell you why. We are makers. we're designers. We are not, for the most part, trained engineers. I know I'm not, at least. I have a degree in philosophy and religion, so what do I know about anything, really? I could make the argument, though, that we are kind of casual engineers of sorts. We design objects, we make objects, and then we have a working understanding based on wisdom and experience, what will and will not hold up over time. But how many times have you said to yourself, in the midst of making a project,
that'll probably hold.
You have a reasonable suspicion that it will hold up to use and abuse over the years, but you don't know for sure. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to actually know with some reasonable amount of confidence what will and will not hold up to use over the years for a client, for your family, for your children? It'd be good to know those things. Now, if you're a nerd like me and you have a genuine curiosity about how the physical world works, Brilliant has easy, digestible 5 to 10 minute lessons for you to be able to keep your knowledge base fresh over the years. So if you want to be able to predict whether a mortise and tenon or a series of dominoes is going to hold up better under load, you can sign up for Brilliant. If you want to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/ENCurtis or click on the link in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Now, theory's all good and well and whatnot, but how does it actually cut? So, functionally speaking, you can see there's no real difference between this cutting edge and the hollow ground cutting edge. I'm getting perfect shavings off of both edges, and more importantly, I'm getting a perfectly clean, faultless surface on my actual workpiece. So from a practical perspective, either one is going to work just fine. But what if you want to get rid of any assistance whatsoever in the sharpening process and learn to sharpen completely freehand? So, functionally, from a sharpening standpoint, how does a convex bevel differ from a hollow grind or a flat bevel? You see how that hooks like this? That bevel is doing this to the point of attack out here, to the edge of the blade. That's that convexity that I'm talking about. That is due to the sharpening motion doing this. Now, functionally, what that means is as I'm sharpening, I'm removing more steel, which is not the end of the world. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means it's going to take a little bit more effort. The shape of the bevel does not affect the actual cutting edge. It's only affecting how much steel you're removing during the sharpening and polishing process. So, how do we go about sharpening a convex bevel like this? So the first thing I'm going to do when sharpening this blade is exactly the same as I did with the flat bevel, which is place it on the stone and find my angle. You might be asking already, how in the world am I going to find this angle if this is round? Because it doesn't matter at what angle I put this on, I can't feel where the actual cutting edge hits. And this is already the first benefit of doing a flat bevel or a hollow grind when freehand sharpening. I have a positive registration for where that cutting angle is. On this convex bevel, I don't have that, so it's more of a sound. And this is an important thing to know when you're using tools. Listen to what you're doing. Music is great, podcasts are great, etc., but hearing what's actually happening around you can give you a lot of information that you can't get just by sight. So I'm going to start at a lower angle where I know it's not actually abrading the cutting edge, and then I'm going to slowly raise this up until I hear that sound difference. Did you hear that? It's like a tinier sound. And at that point, I'm going to lock my elbows in at my side and do the same as I did before. Use my body to move back and forth. I'm going to look at my edge, see how we're doing. I can certainly feel the beginnings of a burr on the underside of my blade, and it's running from corner to corner, and that's what's telling me I've abraded the entire surface. So let's go ahead, just like before, remove our burr from the backside, and then we're going to go over to our 10,000 stone. You see how that high polish goes all the way across that bevel onto the cutting edge? That's what we're looking for. Now, the other thing I'll say is sometimes, depending on how you sharpen and how big the burr is that actually forms on the cutting edge, that burr can stay on there. Now, there's a number of ways to remove the burr. What I do, and I'm gonna show you this just because you gotta piss the internet off in every video for one thing. What I like to do is just do that. I just use the heel of my hand if that burr is in existence, and I just go back and forth. This is not a thing I recommend you do. I just want to be upfront and honest about how I do it. This is just bending that burr back and forth until it breaks off. This is sharper than a surgeon's scalpel at this point, so it can slice you very easily. And what I'm not doing is going this way, because that is how you bleed all over your workshop. I'm going perpendicular to the blade, just like, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, whatever it is, and then that burr is gonna be gone. Just a note. Now, let's assemble this plane. I mean, if that ain't glassy smooth, I don't know what is. So there you go, friends. 3 planes, 3 different sharpening techniques, all producing perfectly adequate, exceptional even, cutting edges and perfect surfaces. My point is this: it doesn't matter how you sharpen. I don't care how you actually get a piece of steel sharp. I only care that you get a piece of steel sharp and that you do it with some efficiency so that you can get back to cutting wood. That's my goal in teaching you these techniques. Choose whatever path you want. Choose whatever path you have access to financially. Choose whatever path you prefer. With so many different ways to skin a cat, there's no reason for you to choose a path that you don't want to do, especially if you're a hobbyist. If this is an enjoyable pastime for you, walk whatever path you find most enjoyable. If you don't want to use jigs, if you want to develop the skill of freehand sharpening, do it. I was that way years ago. I found joy in developing that skill. I mastered it. I got to a point where I found using an aid like a honing guide or a grinding wheel was more efficient, and over time I cared more about cutting wood than I did about grinding steel, and so I incorporated these aids into my process. And if you're the kind of person who doesn't care at all about sharpening and only wants to cut wood, a hollow grind and a honing guide are going to get you in and out of this process quicker than any other process that I've used. So whatever you find to be the best path for you, go do that. Develop some skill, get back to making furniture, because that's why y'all are watching this channel in the first place. It's about woodworking. This is not a metalworking channel, just for the record. So friends, I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it was informational or educational or maybe entertaining. I don't know. It's a sharpening video. How entertaining can it be? But until next week, friends, go make a thing. Cheers.